Okay, I think that's really about all I need to talk about. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Mark Edward Harris, and he's going to talk to you a little bit, and then he is going to get us started with our conversation with Sandro for tonight. Mark, how are you doing today?
Great, Jason, and obviously thrilled to be here with my great friend Sandro Miller. There's Sandro on the screen up there. I don't know how many of you guys have met Sandro in person, but when we get past the pandemic, and there's definitely light at the end of the tunnel for sure, I highly encourage you to take one of his workshops. For sure, he'll be back at LACP at some point, but he will be at the Palm Springs Photo Festival virtually in April and in September in person, hopefully, if we get to that point by then, which I think we will. An amazing instructor, besides obviously being an incredible award-winning photographer, who's had two Lucy Photographer of the Year awards, great director, 2011, best new director for something we're going to see later this evening that I'm sure you guys will enjoy. And we're going to talk about his muse, who might be a bit of a surprise to you guys who that is. And we're going to just jump into it pretty quickly so we can actually talk. And if there are some questions you have, yes, you can wait until the end for the Q&A part with the audience. Or if there's something that you see an image and you'd like to ask something about it now, we can't always get to them, but I'll try to keep an eye over to my side of the screen where I can see that in the chat room, and Jason will do that as well. So let's Jason, if you can hit the official button to launch it, we'll jump in. And Sandro, do you want to say hi to everybody?
Hello, everyone. It's so nice. It's so nice to be here this evening. I'm honored, and I see some familiar faces out there that I saw, which was just now removed from my screen, and I see a big Sandro. Uh, but it's very nice to have a wonderful crowd, wonderful people that all love the same thing that I love, photography, taking pictures and making magical moments and sometimes even creating history. So it's really nice. I thank all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules. Hopefully you've got a glass of wine or a beer or whatever your beverage is while you're listening to me during this evening. But like Mark said, write down your questions, anything that you would like to ask me. Uh, Basically well, first of all, I want to say thank you to LACP. I want to thank Julia Dean and Brandon Gannon and the whole LACP gang and Jason, my tech tonight. And of course, I want to thank Mark Edward Harris, our moderator tonight. Mark and I are pretty good friends, so it was kind of a natural for Mark to moderate this tonight. We've had a lot of long discussions about photography, and Mark's done a couple of really wonderful pieces for different magazines for me, and I'm very grateful to have a friend like Mark Edward Harris. So thank you, Mark.
A pleasure, Sandro.
Yeah. So tonight I think what I thought we would do. I've been shooting for about 45 years. I've had a really wonderful, very successful career internationally, both in the commercial world and in the art world. And for many of us know that's a little bit of an oddity. I mean, most photographers will either make that decision whether they want to become a commercial photographer or if they want to become an art photographer. And for me, I found it very important to do both. I think partially what happened, growing up in a family with a single mom and growing up relatively poor, as she had three kids and an immigrant mother, it was very difficult for her to work. So there was this thing about me not wanting to live. I don't want to call it in poverty, but live, a very meager life. And so the commercial work was something that interested me early on because I knew, I understood that you could make a good living with commercial work. But there was something about, years and years and years of doing commercial work, which I absolutely love. I absolutely love solving problems for my clients. And I have such great relationships with so many wonderful clients that I've been working for years and years and years, there was something missing. And what was missing was the work that one does for the soul. And so tonight, what you're going to see mostly is a lot of personal work. I'll call it personal work. I mean, there will be some jobs, some editorial work, kind of mixed in there. But what I'm going to talk about, you'll hear me mention a couple of times tonight, is the importance of doing personal work, the work that satisfies your soul, and how that work will eventually lead into commercial work. Because it's been my feeling, I've been doing personal work now for probably over 30 years, and I feel like I'm getting hired by the really great creative directors, the really great agencies, the really great art directors, not because of the last commercial project that I shot, but because of the personal work that I, spend so much time, energy, and have these ideas and this direction, these long series of work that I do. I think that that's what has made me, at my age, which I would probably consider, a little bit on the elder side, as photographers go today, makes me still very, very, very sought after. So with that there, what we'll do is we'll get started. Jason, if you wouldn't mind moving into the blues work.
Okay, give me 1 second. Make sure this is all going the right way. Why? There we go.
There we go. Blues musicians. So at about 23 years old, I opened my own studio after working 4 or 5, maybe 6 years with photographers, kind of just learning the business. I'm a self-taught photographer. Again, because of coming through the not being able to go to a school, to a college for photography. My work actually, I actually kind of learned my work through first assisting, and then I started collecting books. And Jason, we can go just a little bit slower here on these here, well, or else we're gonna get through this before I even get through the blues. But it was really about, I started collecting books when I was in my early 20s. And it was there that I began to see the work of Irving Penn, August Saunders, Avedon, Diane Arbus, Joseph Karsh. These were the people that really, 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 really influenced me. And I began examining these books and really kind of learning about portraiture from these books. I started understanding lighting. I would dissect the lightings. I would dissect compositions. I would begin to understand the stories, the narratives that were being told between the photographer, and I call them participants. I don't call the people who sit in front of my camera sitters. I call them participants. And the reason why I call them participants is because they really are participating in an act of creating something. It's a collaboration. Yes, I draw things out of them, but they've got to show up and they've got to come in with an open mind, and they've got to come in ready and allowing me to break them down, maybe even become vulnerable to give me what I call that little secret. So I call the people that sit for me participants. Okay. So I'm going to stick with this image right here for a moment, Jason. So this is the first set of portraits that I did in my 20s. As I came out of working for a few other photographers, mostly a gentleman by the name of David Deal, Big Deal, out of Chicago. I was his first assistant for about 3-4 years. So I learned kind of the art of commercial photography. I learned and began to understand, the financial rewards that commercial photography could do. I learned about lighting. I learned how to deal with clients. But then as I left and went open my own studio at 23, David was a product photographer. And my whole soul was really about connecting with people. I mean, I wanted to shoot people so bad. And this came from really from the first day at 16 years old when I saw that great portrait by Irving Penn of Picasso. I mean, my whole life changed at that very, very moment. That day at 16 years old, when I opened that American Photography magazine, I saw Irving Penn's Picasso. My life changed. And that's what I knew what I wanted to do.
And
So
Sandro, who is this here? Who's the sitter here?
this is the godfather of the blues. This is John Lee Hooker. And anybody who knows the blues music will know that John Lee Hooker is the man. You know, he's no longer here. But the great story about John Lee, I mean, and John Lee Hooker, he's one of these guys, when you look in the dictionary and you look at the word cool, it's his photograph that's after that, because this guy is so cool, it's incredible. But the day that I photographed John Lee Hooker, he was in a hotel in Valparaiso, Indiana. His manager brought down his guitar so I could rig his guitar up, you know, and light the guitar and light the person in my stand-in. I always have a stand-in there that will help me with my lighting. So once I got this all set, his manager said, I want you to come up and get John Lee up in his room. So I walk up, you know, it's like a Marriott, you know, it's nothing special. I'm walking down this long hallway and I go, well, this is interesting. I'm gonna get to go to John Lee Hooker's room and pick him up. Knock on the door. John Lee opens up the door and he said, young man, he goes, I got the gout really bad today. You're gonna have to help me out. So the gout is something that people get when it's a blood circulation thing, and they have a hard time walking, excuse me. And so here I am. I'm walking back down to this little studio that I have set up in the hotels, and I've got John Lee Hooker with his arm around me, and I'm thinking I got the coolest guy in the world right now. I'm, you know, walking down this hallway down to get this photo taken. So it was an interesting day, to say the least. And this is one of the portraits I got of John Lee.
Did you for the backdrop? Did you carry something with you, or did you just find something there and said this is going to work?
You know, Mark, you know, you and I work a lot differently. You know, we've worked together, we've taught together, and what I love about the way you work is you're a minimalist. You walk in with your cameras and a couple little lights, and you make it happen.
Yep.
I would be considered more of a studio photographer, which means I come in with my lights and I come in with my backgrounds. You know, a lot of this stuff has already been maybe pre-lit in the studio. I'll test things out in the studio, and then I'll bring that package with me to wherever I go around the world and use that type of light. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. So this was done in probably maybe 1983, 1984, right about that time.
And you tend to, as you said, with Irving Penn, was somebody who had a huge influence on you. What was it about, I guess we would say Mr. Penn, that had such an impact?
Well, I think Irving left enough mystery in his portraits. You know, there was a beautiful highlight side, but he was not afraid of the shadow, the dark side. And he was not afraid of showing people probably what I would consider not their best light. You know, Irving shot for himself. Irving didn't shoot for the magazine to make something that they wanted. And he wasn't going to do a portrait that was really flattering of the person. He was going to take a photograph that told stories, that had a narrative in it. You know, so many of us have stories in our face, in our hands, in our eyes. Some people have more. Some people have novels in their face. And Irving was going to show those stories, those novels in the people's faces. And so I would say that often, probably, I would imagine that people weren't extremely happy with the portrait that Irving shot. And I think Avedon was very much the same way. You know, completely different styles. But Avedon would shoot these portraits of people and, you know, and catch them in kind of these odd little moments that sometimes they weren't very, very flattering, but they made for a great, great, great portrait because the viewer would take a look at these images and wonder what was going on at that particular moment. And that's what I think a great portrait is. It's not about, we all walk into a portrait session when we're being photographed ourselves. We all come in and we put on a different character. We think that we're somebody that we're really, really not. Well, I think Irving was really captured who we really were. I mean, if you sat down in front of Irving's camera, he was going to show you who you were.
Well, and it's amazing when, I mean, you talk about Avedon and his impact as well in the American West. And I'm sure most of you guys out there have seen that work. That was criticized in some ways, but that you're right, that approach about just showing, this is what I'm going to show you. This is what I'm taking. I'm not here to shoot an image with no wrinkles or this or that. I have something I want to say with the camera,
right?
And I'm going to do it. And if some people criticize it, so what? And I guess let's go on, Jason, to the next.
Really quick side note, there's for our photographer lovers out there, and particularly anybody out there who really loves Avedon, there is an unbelievable biography written on Avedon right now. It's called, I think it's called A Legend Becomes Us. It's the best read about photography I've ever read. It's just a wonderfully written book. What Becomes a Legend or something like that. If you just put Avedon new book, it's a sensational book, and I would recommend it to everybody.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So Jason, we could move on here so we don't get too far behind.
And it's interesting, you did, just to quickly, you did mention Irving Penn and not always trying to show everybody just in the greatest light or whatever, but in that same American Photography, there was an image of Colette as well, which later on we're going to see in your interpretation of Penn, and it all comes together, which is amazing. So you guys keep that in mind when we get to that section later on. So tell us about American Bikers.
Okay, so American Bikers was the first project that I kind of set out to go do out of the studio. Again, probably a little bit of influence or inspiration from Irving Penn, from his 1950s, 1960s Hell's Angels. It's a little different, but definitely it had, a little influence in me going out there to shoot these bikers. I've always been interested in the biker life. And so I'm always interested also in kind of the downtrodden, the people who live a little bit of a harder life. You'll see photographs of bikers, boxers, bullfighters. I seem to lean towards people who've had a little bit maybe of a more interesting or maybe a little bit of a harder life. So I think that you'll find a lot of my work that tends to go that way. Okay, and we'll talk about that during a little bit more of the talk. So right. Jason, let's go through the American Bikers here really quickly here, about 5-6 seconds per image. And again, this was shot, everybody started at the late 80s. This was about a 3-4 year project. Most of my project takes years to do. I'm a pretty simple guy when it comes to lighting. I choose a main light, and a lot of times that main light may light my background, or I may bring a little bit of a light for the background just to put a little punch in it. But mostly I'm a very, very simple. I learned a lesson early on, and the guy told me it was KISS, K-I-S-S, keep it simple, stupid. And I have followed that rule on the way I've lit for so much of my career, and I think it's really about first the subject that you choose to shoot. There is an exact spot where I put my lights, which I can pick up the maximum amount of detail in their face or in their clothing without, I don't like a flat lighting. You'll rarely see me like very flat. Again, here's what I'm talking about, the stories and the novels. There's a novel in this gentleman's face here. There's more going on there than just somebody sitting in front of a camera. And this is me. I usually like to talk to my participants. I like to find out about them. Once I find out a little bit about them, I could, embellish on the story and actually draw something out of them. I will tell you the biggest lesson that I learned from shooting these American bikers is to never judge anybody by how they look. Never judge anybody by how they look. I mean, you would have, going in, you look at this guy here, his name's his Bones. You thought that this guy would have been just a complete, dangerous looking, your thoughts, the things that we learn from television or from the media really come out when you see a person like this here. But I will tell you, 99% of the bikers that I photographed, you couldn't find nicer people. And so I learned really early on in my career to never judge anybody by how they look. Jason, we could move on. I just love this image. So these two were married to sisters. They're brother-in-laws. I mean, when I met these guys, it was just like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And then they told me their story about being brother-in-laws. And again, just salt of the earth type of guys.
Well, it's interesting, when you're talking about sort of the people that have sort of, the people on the slightly out of or sometimes way out of the norm. I mean, it sort of reminds me of what Mary Ellen Mark and I were talking about, the people that she focused on. Where do you think that it comes from, though? Is it from that upbringing where you guys were struggling and a single mom? And unfortunately, and I discovered this today in reading about Sandro's early history, though have been friends for a long time, that he lost his dad very, very early on when you were a child to an auto accident, which is just, horrendous. Is that what brought you to an interest with the people that were sort of maybe the out of the mainstream or that had more struggles than the average person, or where does that come from?
Well, Mark, I mean, there's, you'll be able to read. I'm working on my retros book right now, and it will be out in a few years. But I began just talk a little bit about my childhood, and I had a pretty difficult, rough childhood. I would say that probably my dreams were taken away from me, as a child, and that comes from just a kind of rough living, after a father dying, and then probably these other men that were in my mom's, life that made it very, very, very difficult. So I think there was, it was those beginnings that were, really, I would say, difficult times for me, rough. And so I have this very, I think, a soft, empathetic, loving heart for people that have had a little bit of a rougher start, or have a rough life. I tend to gravitate to them a little bit and want to help them, and I want to work with them. So I think that's probably the attraction to me. Yeah.
And
Hey,
let's tell
Jason, if we can go back one, Jason, I got a really quick story here on this guy here. This guy's name is Gangster. He was with the Fort Lauderdale Outlaws. This guy is a badass bad guy. And basically, when I got him into my tent, this was in Daytona, where I photographed him. I would make these makeshift studios, and he came in with a whole clan of bikers. And he got to the spot where I wanted him to be, where my light was right. And he was talking to his other biker friends and to the women, and he was just not paying attention at all. And I just kind of said, sir, if you turn around here, we could get this started, and you could, go back and join your friends. And he basically turned around and goes, if you don't hurry up, this is going to go up your effing ass.
Oof.
Boom, I hit the shutter. I kid you not, just out of almost fear. And I got 3 negatives off on him, 3 negatives. And this is probably the most perfect image I've taken in my whole career. Probably the most perfectly placed. I mean, if you look at the shadow coming off of his back arm, the size of the finger, the placement, the eyes, and this is, just being ready. I mean, really being ready, but hitting that shutter. And I tell you, it was probably a little out of fear and a little bit out of just plain quick reaction. I knew I had a shot there. But, you know, Irving Penn said that a great, great, great photographer may, in his lifetime, may produce 10 iconic images. Well, this is probably one of my very few iconic images here. It was shot in 1990. It's been in many magazines. In fact, it was in the New Yorker magazine. Tina Brown, right after she became the editor of the New Yorker magazine, she hired Avedon as a staff photographer, and they've never had a photographer for the New Yorker magazine before. About a year after she hired Avedon, she ran a 10-page spread in the New Yorker magazine, and this was a double-page spread in the New Yorker magazine.
I remember that.
Yeah.
You should have had some of the guys from your next series backing you up when you were shooting this guy.
I should have, yeah.
Yeah, they could have taken him on. So, so tell us about the boxers.
Well, again, boxers, you know, they're that group of young men and women, often in living in big, big, big cities, trying to get out, you know, trying to get out of the cities and trying to, you know, come usually from a poor background, a very difficult background, and they dedicate themselves with the dream of becoming the next Muhammad Ali. And it's been a very, very interesting project. I've traveled all over the world shooting boxers. I love going in. We can go to our first image. I love to going into places that smell like boxing. You know, you could smell the fight to get out. And a lot of these rings from all over the world, I mean, they're in really grungy, gritty neighborhoods, and the workout room itself is very grungy. There's a lot of sweat, a lot of sweaty people, a lot of sweaty gloves around, and it just has this smell about wanting to get out, you know. And I love that about going into these places to shoot these young boxers. And again, just the salt of the earth type of people. Jason, we can go through some of these here. Just the salt of the earth type of people. This is in Cuba here. I did a big, big, big project in Cuba. The Cuban government, they didn't hire me because they didn't have any money, but they asked me to come to Cuba to shoot all of their national heroes and all their Olympic gold medal winners. So I went in the summer of 2001 in August for a full month to shoot their boxers and all of their Olympic stars.
Was that your first time down in Cuba?
No, it was actually my second time down. I went down the first time I went down to shoot boxers, and then the Cuban government saw my work and asked me if I would come back and shoot all of these Olympic stars that they had. And believe it or not, I was scheduled to be there on September 12th, the day after 9/11 happened. I was on the very first flight that went out of Chicago to Miami on 11/14. And it was just a horrifying, very, 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 you know, scary time to be in the air. But it was something that Cuba had gathered 90 of their stars to come to Havana into the Olympic Stadium for me to photograph. So I had to get there for them.
And as you said earlier, I mean, so much of what put you on a map are these personal projects, not, you know, somebody for me and a lot of our audience, I think, would know Eve Arnold. But she said to me when she did her In China book, that came out of, you know, the unevenness of a freelance life. Either you're overwhelmed with work or you're sitting around waiting for the phone to ring. So she developed early on that idea of doing long-term projects. In China was that. And so once again, it's this personal work that put you on the map and has kept you on the map. And people come to you often, as we'll see later as well. A lot of the commercial work is because people see an image from your personal work and they say, can you basically apply this to what we're doing here?
Exactly, Mark. That's happened my whole career.
Yeah.
It really, really, really has. Yeah.
So when you get a call for, like, you know, can you do a pro bono thing, you know, such as like the Cuban government saying this, You don't blink at all. It's just
I don't. In fact, I would encourage everybody here who's listening tonight, if you are a working photographer and you're looking to be able to do great work, pro bono work is so often the work that you're hired to shoot something for maybe a charity or for a foundation. So you might be shooting for a food bank, you might be shooting for a home that houses people who are blind, or it might be a children's club to keep them off the streets from drugs and gangs. So you got this great palette of people that you're going to be able to photograph, and you're usually not given a direction because you're doing it pro bono. They let you come in and actually do it the way that you want to. And some of the best work I've done in my whole career has been pro bono work. And I mean, if it's a good cause, I mean, today I really make sure it's a really great cause because I can't do everything pro bono. I mean, I was given the middle name of pro bono, Sandro pro bono, for years and years and years because I did so much pro bono work. But I really pick and choose what I do now. But truly, I would encourage everybody out there to do pro bono work, or even if the people don't come to you, go to them, find a charity or organization that you are interested in and ask them, because I bet you they'll say yes. They'll be able to use some photos. Go to them and ask them how you might be able to help them out. And if you're a portrait person, you're always going to find some very, very, very interesting people in these charities and foundations that will help build your portfolio, or just, kind of, really satisfy your soul that first you're doing some really good work for somebody, for a foundation or a charity, but you're also building your portfolio with some very interesting work. Okay, so
editorial. Yeah, let's
this next section is editorial, and so I would say that I'm probably more known as an advertising photographer, but I've done a lot of editorial in my life. I would say what has kind of held me back from being known more as an editorial photographer is the fact that I'm based in Chicago. You're going to find your big editorial guys are either going to be in New York or LA. And, back in the 80s and 90s, it didn't matter where you lived. They were flying you in to shoot whatever they wanted to editorial. But after 9/11, I think things tightened up a lot, and they started using, New York is the editorial capital of the world. So they started using a lot more of their hometown photographers, So being in Chicago, we only have a few publications in Chicago, and they're okay. They're not the big ones, but I've shot for all the big ones, and they're out of New York, and you'll see some of that work here.
It's funny because I used to early on when I was doing more commercial things, and I always thought that Chicago was kind of a big catalog town.
I mean, it's definitely a big catalog town. It's also a big food town. And that's why when I began my career, see, I was at 23, I was supposed to go off to New York. I mean, my dream was to work for Irving Penn. And at 23, a situation came up and I became a single parent at 23 years old. So that kind of spoiled my dream of going to New York to work with Penn. And I had to start making my living in Chicago. And it was, your child comes first. And my mother lived in Chicago. She was going to be able to help me out while I was working. And so I took this other direction, stayed in Chicago. And, I knew that I was sacrificing a lot in my career, but I needed to do what was right for my daughter. And I went into it. It was that moment that I really told myself, I'm not going to be a Chicago photographer. I'm going to be based in Chicago, but I'm going to be an international photographer. And you do that by, first and foremost, is doing good work, being consistent, doing great work, but also it's how you promote yourself. You need to promote yourself. You need to brand, you're a brand. I made Sandro a brand. And every time that you would see, my work would be a single image, Sandro, boom, boom, boom. I became a brand. And it was good work that I would put out there. And I would enter the awards shows. And, and that's probably the greatest way I would say to get known and to get notoriety and also move up that ladder of being a high echelon photographer is winning the awards. So that's how I did it. So I ended up being based in Chicago, but I shot internationally. This is LeBron James right before he came to
Wow.
the NBA. Yeah. So we can go through these rather quick. I want to make sure we get through the presentation. I'm sorry that we're going just getting a little bit behind, but I don't think we're too bad. This is another one from that same series. This is all for ESPN magazine.
So a very young LeBron James. Who is it that was in college still? Who is he playing?
No. LeBron didn't go to college.
Oh, really? He went
No,
straight.
LeBron went right from Akron High School right to the pro. He was 18 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It was incredible.
And so when you do a shot like this, I mean, such shallow depth of field. I mean, what sort of equipment were you working with, camera lens wise, to do this type of shot?
Well, my go-to lens, I'm a Nikon ambassador.
Yep.
I love Nikon equipment, but if I'm shooting portraits, I'm going with a 2.25 camera. And most likely this is a Hasselblad, probably an 80, or this actually could have been this is film. Okay, so this was probably a 100 mm lens, an f2 lens shot at f2, wide open. All I do is focus on that eye. That eye's got to be in focus. Let everything else go out of focus. It becomes a painting.
Amazing.
Yeah. Thank you. Kevin Garnett.
Do you sketch out ideas like this? You say, I'm going to shoot him from a low angle, and I know you said like sometimes you set up lighting in your studio, then you break it down and bring it to location. Or a shot like this, or do you sort of get there and then say, okay, I think with this gentleman, a low angle up might be the way to go, or how does that come about?
Well, I really don't sketch, Mark, but I do my homework. I'll research the person I'm shooting. I'll look at their angles, any material that I could find on them. And a lot of times I'll test back in the studio before I go out on location to shoot on this here. But I've become a really good reader of people's faces. As soon as I meet somebody in the studio, I go to work. My eyes are starting to look at eyes, ears, nose, mouth, hands, things like this here. I'm beginning to look at this here, and I'm already kind of composing what might be the best way to go. And once I get them in set and I feel like I've got something, then I start moving around and I get more free flowing while I'm directing the talent. And I'll tell you, sometimes, wonderful accidents happen. You have to play. You got to have fun while you're shooting. You got to loosen up sometimes. Get the shots, get something that you feel is really good, but then start loosening up a little bit and start having some fun and playing, and actually play with your participant too, but start investigating eyes, hands, lips, light, play with your light a little bit more.
And what I've noticed, you in the workshops we've done together, you tend to, as you said, you move around, but you tend to lock the camera down on a tripod. Do you pretty much almost always, when you're doing portraiture, use a tripod?
I would say probably 80% of the time I do, Mark.
Yeah.
I really do. Really quick story here, guys. This is the very first time I shot Michael. I shot Michael a lot in my career. This is the very first time I shot Michael. Michael walked in and he was doing a TV commercial in the one studio over. They sent him over to me. He came over to me and said, Sandro, I am so sorry. I have about 3 minutes for you, and that's all I can give you. What was wonderful about this here, I wasn't shooting for a particular product. I had no direction from an art director. They just needed some really nice portraits of Michael. Now, I had been up the night before 6-7 hours with a guy of same size as Michael, same complexion, and I lit this guy. So I kind of knew what I wanted. I kind of knew the direction of where I was going to go. Michael came in. I gave him a black turtleneck. I said, Mr. Jordan, put this on, have a seat here, and we went to work. And in that 3 minutes, this is probably, again, one of the most iconic images I've ever shot. But in that session, I shot 72 completely different portraits of Michael, going through all different kinds of emotion with Michael, from screaming to yelling to laughing. I mean, I was just on fire. And I got Michael to do all this stuff for me. And this image right here, I said, Michael, we have to go to a place right now that really hurts. And you know where I need you to go. So he had just lost his father about 2 months before this here. He dipped his head down there, and if you were to look really, really close, it's hard on the screen here, his eye began to well up just a little bit. Click, click, boom, done, on to the next emotion that quickly. But again, this became one of the most iconic shots ever shot of Michael.
Amazing. Yeah. Was his dad, am I confusing people, or was he killed in Florida in a robbery? Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think I'm not 100% sure it was Florida. He was in his car. They think he may have pulled over to sleep and was robbed and killed.
Horrible.
Yeah. And some people tried to link it to Michael's gambling, which is all untrue, stuff like that. But Michael went there for me. And this was one of I shot Michael probably 5 or 6 times on huge, huge campaigns. Gatorade, Hanes, Rayovac batteries, a bunch of stuff like that.
Now, you often, for lighting, you really sculpt the light. We could talk about that later when we get into the other part. But cinefoil and things like that you're using, or
cinefoil. This was probably, believe it or not, a very small 12 by 18-inch Shamira box. This is way back when I kind of lit with really, really, really small lights. I mean, I was really into that light to dark look. So that's what I used a lot back then. So that's probably what that was lit by. And probably a little light behind him, just give me a little bit of a glow coming off the shadow side of his head. So that would separate from the background.
Amazing.
Yep. Next image, Jason. And we'll just keep on going through these here. Well, I got to tell you a really quick story here, because this is one of the greatest stories of Mike. Love this guy here. I've always been a huge fan of Muhammad Ali. So I got 3 minutes with Michael. I got less than a minute with Muhammad Ali. I went to a function. They wanted me to photograph him. 1,000 people at this function. We were able to pull Muhammad away for virtually a minute. I don't even think I got a full roll off on Ali. And someone said, Sandro, that's it. I went up to Ali and I said, Muhammad, I just want to thank you so much. As a man, I absolutely love who you are, what you've done for our country as an ambassador. I said, I watched you all these years in the rings, but what you did outside of the ring has made you such an incredible man. And I walked away. That's it. I didn't wait for a reply or anything. I got up. He got up while I was walking away, came up to me and grabbed my shoulder, turned me around. He put both of these huge hands on my face and he kissed me on my lips. And he said, Sandro, he didn't say Sandro, he said, thank you. That is some of the most beautiful words anybody ever told me.
Wow.
I turned around and I started to cry. It was just so emotional. The fact that Muhammad Ali, felt this big hand, this huge hand, and for him to look you in the eye and say something that you could feel that he really, really, really meant. It was just really one of the most touching moments of my whole career.
Amazing. Yeah, and you can feel that. This is toward the end of his, this is actually after he was really affected by so many years in the ring.
Yeah. And this was the image that the New York Magazine used, a full-page spread to announce his death.
Yeah, amazing.
All right, we'll keep it rolling here.
Yeah. And this is somebody that we definitely, and see, this is interesting when you were talking about Chicago, maybe some of the things that you didn't get at age 23, not being able to move to New York. If you were not in Chicago, how many people, can you guys raise your hands? How many people know who this is? Okay, great. Yeah. John Malkovich has had such an incredible, the two of you together had such an amazing relationship. And if you were not in Chicago, that relationship probably never would have happened. Is that correct?
Oh, you're right, Mark. I mean, Chicago worked out very well for me.
Yeah.
I probably could have got lost in New York. You become another fish in the sea in New York, where in Chicago, I was able to stand out, build a great career out of Chicago. I worked with all the big agencies. I mean, Leo Burnett, Ogilvy, Y&R, Foot Cone. They all helped me build, my career, which helped me expand to New York, LA, Europe. If it wasn't for these deep roots that I had in Chicago, I don't think my career would really be what it is. And I have to almost, look at back in the past. I think faith put me in Chicago to stay in Chicago and make a name for myself there, because people like John Malkovich became part of my life, which, as anybody who knows my work, John has had a significant impact in my career.
Yeah. And how did both of you meet? How did you two meet?
He was with Steppenwolf Theater, and I was shooting for Steppenwolf Theater for about 18 years. And early on, Martha Levy, the artistic director, just called me and said, Sandro, John's in a play coming up. And this was a star-studded theater. I mean, John Mahoney, Gary Sinise, most of their ensemble member, you'll see them on TV today. I mean, they're all big time actors. So they told me that, John's coming in and we need a portrait of John. And John and I we just absolutely hit it off at that very first session. And then anytime he would come to Chicago, he'd kind of contact me and we would just play. I mean, we would have so much fun. He never said no to me with any of my ideas. I mean, this is just stuff that I just conjure up, laying in bed thinking, what can I do with John? John's coming in next week and I want to set up 3-4 interesting shots. I get a hold of my wardrobe styles. I talk to my makeup people. I talk to my hair people. We get together and we start, creating these little sets and we play is really what it was, and you'll see that was so much of my work with John, which, that first 14 years would later lead me into what it would probably produce to be my biggest project of all time.
For sure. We'll talk about that. I do want to show everybody, this is, since the shot's here, I'm a huge, as you can see behind me, a big antiquarian book collector in modern books. And so this is just one of, I think I've got 6 of your books coming out. We're going to talk about another project and I'll show the other book later. But I highly recommend for those of you that are into photography books, please check out one amazing book after another, including some that have won IPA, Book of the Year. So let's go through this, Jason. Let's roll to the next one. And where did this concept come from?
This was a project. I got a call from a magazine in Poland called Viva that they wanted me to do some recreations for them. And this one did not. They did not use this image. So again,
so they didn't. Yeah.
Sometimes I come up with these ideas that are a little bit too, too difficult. Yeah. But it makes for a great photograph. This is a diptych. I usually put these two together and show them as a diptych. Mm. So of course, because I've got this relationship with John, I get called by all kinds of publications and movie posters to shoot John all the time.
Well, that is a great jacket. Not everybody could pull that one off.
Well, really quickly here. So I know I've got John coming in for this shot. So I get the okay from John that he's coming in on a Monday. So I go to bed that night, come up with this concept, call my seamstress the next day on Saturday, tell him my idea. He tells me I'm completely out of my mind, that there's no way I'm going to get this done. I go, you have to get this done. And we have to do it. So we went over to the fabric store, picked out the fabric, and he had this for me Monday morning.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
This was for Viva magazine, recreation of Pope Paul. Tweety. Sorry about that.
Okay. And this is another one. If you were to have a second muse, William Dafoe, maybe, or is that? I mean, you haven't worked with him that much, but definitely every time you do.
My screen went away. Is there any reason? How do I get my screen back?
Jason's the.
You not seeing?
If you click on the Zoom icon, you might. I think everybody else is fine, Sandra. We see it. So we have William Dafoe on the screen. Maybe if you click on the Zoom icon on your computer.
Oh, there we go. Sorry about that, guys. Okay.
That's okay. You're all
Yeah, so
set.
this is of course is William Dafoe. This is the great photo editor at New York Magazine, Jody Kwan, calls me to shoot Dafoe. Dafoe gave me 24 minutes, and we did 4 wardrobe changes in 24 minutes.
Wow. Oh, so have you only shot with him one time?
Only one time.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
I've had 24 minutes with him.
Yeah, because you have a lot of different setups with
Well, that was all done in 24 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's a wonderful, wonderful guy. Great actor. We can go to the next one, Jason. This is all done the same day. Yeah, this is a Gucci jacket that I had to shoot him in.
Would you say, going to that Irving Penn 10 iconic photos, would you consider this up there with one of those, or?
I don't know, that's hard to say.
Yeah.
And maybe time will tell a little bit more there. Mark, the Jordan and the biker giving the finger, those are all vintage shots.
Yeah.
And I think images tend to become more valuable and more iconic over time. But there's been some great shots of William Dafoe. I think these are really, I think they're good shots. I know that the magazine was very happy with them. Whether they're iconic, he's got such an iconic face. He's got such a great face. What a face to photograph.
That's for sure.
Yeah, and a good soul and a great actor. Next shot, Jason. This will be the last of the William Dafoe images here that we show.
And what's interesting about this, and I'll just jump in with a story real quickly, is you told me when we did one of our interviews, is that this was in a ballroom or something, and you found behind a bunch of chairs that were stacked up a huge mural or something, right?
Well, there was about 300 chairs stacked up on this wall that you're seeing in the background here. And I started just moving a couple of chairs around and saw that there was this amazing painting back there. So I had my assistants, I get in hours ahead before the shoot begins. And I saw this wonderful wall back there. I had my assistants move all these chairs, which took them, over 30 minutes, because there virtually was probably about 300 chairs in front of this thing here. We disclosed this wonderful background. And as you can see, it just made for a beautiful photograph.
Right. And I haven't had a chance to really get to any of the questions from the people, which we'll be able to do afterwards if we have some time. But somebody asked about the lighting on Dafoe for this. Did you run through like 4 sets or something? And how did you light?
I had 3 different sets. One was just an octabank. This particular shot here was lit with it was an 8x8 silk with a para, another para silk behind going through the 8x8 silk. Is what it was. One light's doing Dafoe and doing the background.
Yeah, you really, it's seldom that you'll do a portrait with more than what, 3 lights?
Two lights.
2 lights.
I mean, every maybe once a year I'll add a 3rd light if I want to add a little highlight along the side, back in the back, if I want to do something like that. But I really am a 1 or 2 light type of guy. But it's finding, it sounds simple, but it's finding the absolute perfect spot where that light belongs. So I'm getting just enough glint in the shadow eye, and letting it fall off, still fall off over there, but just getting just the right glint. So there is a method to my madness, of where I'm going to put that light. And once you get that light in the spot, it's butter. It's just absolutely comes alive and it's beautiful.
Great. Okay, Jason.
This is the very last portrait done of Dennis Hopper.
Yeah.
He passed away not long after this here of cancer.
Oh.
Okay, this was supposed to read Dance for Life. Unfortunately, it reads Dance for AIDS. But very quickly, for about 15 years, there's an organization in Chicago called Dance for Life, and it was created as a charity, and it's created to help raise money for our dancers, not just in Chicago, but worldwide. Back in the 80s, when AIDS was, finding its home into many of our gay dancers, they didn't have insurance that would help them with medical care. So they created this foundation called Dance for Life. And it was a wonderful, wonderful evening of dance. And we would raise absolutely just buckets of money that would help this organization. And they would spread their money out throughout the world to help young dancers that, not, first it started off as dancers were coming down with HIV, but then because of the industry, the dance industry doesn't really relatively have good insurance, they would help them with a lot of their other health problems also. So it was a wonderful organization. And now because I'm doing, you can go through these, Jason. Now because it's again, it's pro bono, I get to do what I want to. I call the shots. And this is a perfect moment here. I mean, this is such a difficult rarity to capture an image like this here, where everything comes together absolutely perfect. And that's what you're looking for in a dance shot, is the absolute perfect moment. The feet are perfect, the hands are perfect, the clothing's perfect. And this is one of those shots that this is the cover of my dance book here.
Yeah, so beautiful. And so
I was able to come up, every year we come up with a new concept for the program. And in the program, there'd be between 8 and 10 photographs. And because I was dealing with a very open-minded audience, because most of the audience were gay men, so they were very open-minded, and I would be able to come up with some very risque ideas and put them in these programs, and everybody loved them. It became a really big part of the foundation every year to find out, to see what the program looked like. And these are all images that were used in the program.
And are they just jumping off a hard wooden floor to get this, or are you using some sort of trampoline?
Sometimes off just a hard wooden floor. Sometimes I'd have a little trampoline that they could bounce off of. But always my camera's on the floor, Mark. My camera's on the floor. So by putting your camera on the floor, it actually makes it look like they're jumping higher.
Ah.
Yeah. So you're shooting up at them.
And then strobes, of course, in order to freeze.
Strobes that will stop action.
Yep.
Yeah.
Are you using constant light sources more now, or you're sticking to?
I can't say I'm using them more, but I do use them a lot. And the reason why I use them a lot, Mark, is because now that I do a lot of directing, my commercial projects will ask me to shoot the motion, which of course you need continuous light, and you don't have time to switch over to strobes. So now you're shooting whatever it is that you just shot in motion. You're now shooting a still of it, and so you need to learn how to adjust your continuous lights very quickly in order to make it work for your still shot.
And now, I mean, with the I mean, obviously, since the late 40s, when they used to have the huge strobes, before then, obviously some of the great classic people that you emulate in your next series that were using constant lights, they sort of disappeared for a while. Then HMI sort of came in, they creeped in, and now we've got amazing constant light sources with a lot of power without the heat. So we're kind of retro in certain ways.
Now, we are in a really good time for photography because the equipment's come such a long way, Mark.
Yeah.
And especially with the lighting. These particular images, I call them fallen angels. The last three that you saw, I just call them fallen angels. They just, I get these ideas in my head, and so often they'll come through while I'm meditating, or they'll come at night when I'm laying in bed. I come up with ideas. I visualize things, and then I try to just see if I can make them work, the next day or when the situation arises. But, so often, during meditations, when you really empty your mind of everything else, that's when magic starts happening and comes into your psyche and your thoughts. And then, you know, when you get those thoughts, you write them down and you can hopefully refer back to them at some point.
It's funny, Helmut Newton actually told me the same thing, that he always kept pen and paper next to his bed because he could not go back to sleep unless he wrote them out. And I have a feeling that's exactly the same for you.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Jason, we'll keep going here. She was my muse for a long time. She was the prima ballerina at the Joffrey Ballet. She was about 2% body fat. She was an amazing dancer, but to photograph her was incredible. So she was a muse of mine for many, many years. This is her again. This is actually her husband. And again, these were all used for the program during my 14, 15 year tenure, you know, being the photographer for Dance for Life. Again, all pro bono, but I was given the opportunity to work with the best dancers in Chicago to create whatever I wanted to create. And now they're all in a book. So, you know, we can't always think about money. You know, I think that you need to erase that from your thoughts. When, you know, we love taking pictures, and if you get an opportunity and it's pro bono, but you could create something really wonderful, it's so important for us to take and accept these opportunities and make something great out of it. I would have never gotten any of these images if I would have said no, because it's a charity.
Right, and the most creative work often comes from the freedom of pro bono.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And actually, then in reality, then you not only books but exhibitions, and then you sell prints. You've done very well with print sales over the years too. So
I have, Mark, and that will be, you know, when I put the cameras down, you know, probably with the commercial work in 4 or 5 years, and decide to go strictly with the artwork, you know, this will continue to feed my family for years and years and years to come. Is the work that I've created, you know, the personal work that I've created. They're the work that's being shown in the galleries and the museums now, and they're beginning to, you know, show up on the secondary market. So it's really important, and I think that this is what is, you know, this will be the second half of my life, the next 50 years.
There you go.
Go ahead, Jason. You can keep on going here because I know we're probably, how are we doing here? We're okay.
Oh, we're doing fine. We're doing just fine.
Okay, good.
This is your little Irving Pen tribute right here.
It is. It is. You know, I love that corner. What Irving did there, but he did it much better. You know, as you see, you know, I change it up a lot. You know, I've got a style, but I'm not afraid to examine and experiment with a lot of different types of lights and feelings, you know, in my work. And I think you're going to see that even more when you know, we're going in a little bit of a chronological order, you know, so we're getting into a little bit more of the newer work after this here. So you'll see how my lighting begins to change and my style changes a little bit, my palettes change a little bit. But I think, you know, so many photographers get stuck in a look and they're afraid to experiment. They get too comfortable. And I think as soon as you start getting too comfortable, you lose your creativity, you know? And I think it's so important for all of us to take time and play and examine what's going on. You know, I do a lot of studying of work that's being done in Europe, in Italy, in France, in the Netherlands. You know, I feel like they're a couple years ahead of us. So I love to investigate. You know, I buy a lot of European magazines, seeing where the possible palettes might be coming, you know, to America in 2-3 years, you know. But I'm always working, experimenting with different types of light and trying to come up with something new and fresh.
Okay, now this is the last image I have in the slideshow.
Okay.
In
a slideshow?
No, which is very strange. I just noticed that it said of 82. There's actually the one that you have should have many.
Oh no, there's another 100 images.
Yeah, which
Oh,
I have here. Is there a way for me to
Mark,
take
do you have
over
it
the
pulled up?
screen?
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing, and then Mark, why don't you go
Okay,
ahead?
right. And so in order for me to pick up the screen, what do I hit here?
So after you hit share screen, it'll bring up a window. You can pick whether it's your desktop or whether it's a
Gotcha.
PowerPoint program or what have you. Just click on the right thing
Perfect.
there.
Good. Yeah, I'm not sure why, because I've got the same one. I don't know how it cut off at 82, but let's keep
Yeah, so we
going.
should
It's the
probably
one
pick
that I
up
had.
the pace a little bit, Mark.
Sorry?
Let's pick up the pace a little bit
Yeah,
here.
for sure. Here we go.
And this is the last dance image here.
Yeah, and then we're gonna move on because, yeah, as we see, so this is incredible. And yeah, in order to keep the pace, we'll go. Do you want to talk about these a bit, Sandro?
Really quickly here, I had 27 women in my studio, 27 moms who have lost their sons and daughter to unjust killings by policemen.
Oh.
Okay, from all over the country, they came to my studio to be interviewed, to talk. We had all the TV stations in my studio. Once they found out that I had all these women in there. And so while I'm shooting video, we're also shooting stills. And this is all real. I mean, I'm not asking these people to cry. These women are crying because they are so hurt.
And these are like children of the victim.
Just another pro bono project. This is called Off the Street Club. It's a club that protects children from the gangs and drugs in Chicago's West Side. I do a lot of pro bono work for them.
This is a magnificent portrait. And this is for, who is this for?
From Mount Sinai Hospital. This is a young girl who got some special help from a hospital. Again, it's pro bono work. All three of those last projects you saw up on screen, all pro bono work.
Such elegant control. Uh-oh.
Oh my gosh. How did this guy get in my
Boy.
presentation?
I apologize to you guys if you recognize. Now, what's interesting about this was done when we were in India. And what's amazing, and I never asked you about this, but I am left-eyed. I'm a left-eyed photographer. And how did you know? We had zero discussion about anything. How did you know to highlight that eye rather than the other one?
Well, I don't think I actually instinctively knew, but again, the way I work, Mark, I work so closely with examination. I examine people's faces very closely, and something, it's intuitive. I think it's something that I feel in my heart, my soul, when I see a face of what needs to be lit, what I want to go in the darkness. And this is probably, because we're teaching a class in India, I'm showing a type of light to the workshop, which is a grid, probably a 10-degree grid, which is a very tight, small light. Mark had the perfect face for me to experiment and show what this light can do. And it just ended up being a really nice portrait, I thought, of Mark. And so it's actually, it's in my portfolio. It's a possible select for the retrospect book. We don't know for sure, but it's just an interesting light. And again, it's about playing and experimenting.
But what's amazing is to be on the other side of the lens from you. You really mold the person, and you're in there. You tend to be there with a wider lens. You're not sitting back with with like the traditional 105. In the old days, the 105 portrait lens. You really are in there and molding. It's an incredible experience.
Well, Mark, I will also say, pre-COVID, and I hope I can get back to it. I'm a very hands-on type of person. I like to touch my participants.
Yeah.
I like to talk to them. I like to hold their hand. I like to touch their shoulder. I like to even touch their cheek. Because what happens is something, a fear and a vulnerability stops. They feel very close to me. I'll hold someone's hand a lot while I'm shooting them.
Yeah.
And there's a transformation of kind of love and care that transfers from my body into theirs while I'm photographing them. And again, magic happens at those moments.
Sure. Well, and also for some of it, your lighting is so intricate that I think you can't say to somebody, move 1/4 of an inch. You actually, like Camille Claudel or Rodin or whatever, have to sort of mold them by just slightly moving them. It will break the momentum if you have to explain verbally to get to that exact angle. They can't see themselves. So Morocco was
Go back one image, please, Mark.
sorry.
Go back one image.
Okay.
This is actually a portrait of my mother when I told her I was going to become a photographer.
Wow. And you dressed her up for that, or did she?
That's not really my mom, Mark.
Oh, okay, I don't know. You know, everything you say, I believe, which was.
Well, I wouldn't believe that one. But I look at this woman, I go, this is the kind of reaction I probably did get from my family when I told them I wanted to be a photographer. They wanted me to go into the you know, I had a stepfather at that time who wanted me to go into the family business of being a carpenter. Boy, would that have been a waste of a career.
Well, I don't know. Harrison Ford started out as a carpenter out here, didn't he?
Then I go off to Morocco. We'll go through these rather quickly. This is the first project that I did. 2011, I was diagnosed with a stage 4 cancer. I had a very, very, very difficult year. We didn't know if I was going to make it through that year. But I came, while I was laying in bed in recovery, I came up with 2 ideas of projects that I wanted to do. This was one of the projects.
Wow.
And this was, I shot this about 2 years after I had cancer, after I got the strength back to go out and start shooting. I went to Morocco and shot this project here. And this won me the 2014 International Photographer of the Year Award.
Right. And right here, you guys, is the book, Eyes of Morocco, as you can see right here. Is just another one of Sandro's great book projects.
And I don't know if everybody can see it on their screen, but the background, you know, it's a black and white image, but the background is red. Okay. So again, now I'm trying to come up with an idea or something that separates me from August Saunders, separates me from Irving Penn, separates me from Avedon. And so most of the time, you know, we've seen black and white mixed with color. It gets pretty cheesy. It gets pretty bad. But I experimented for months and months and months, and I got this red dye that I made this background out of, and it was a really deep, dark red dye. It's you know, it's almost a Moroccan red, I call it. And I shot this stuff, of course, shot it digitally in color, and then I would take the color out of my subject, my participants, keep the color in the background, so there's just a hint of color, because I wanted to do something different.
Oh.
Again, a big influence from August Saunders, his portraits that he did in Germany, and Irving Penn's, the portraits that he did of workers in New York. You know, again, I spend so much time in these books, and I soak up so much information, and I get inspired and influenced. You know, influences come from books, museums, galleries, music, reading. I mean, my inspiration comes from so many different places. This particular project here, this Papua New Guinea, you know, when I heard that Michael Rockefeller was eaten by cannibals in Papua New Guinea, I started watching these movies. One was called Dead Birds, and another movie was called something Rockefeller. Well, I watched these films, and I go, I got to go to Papua New Guinea. You know, I met somebody in Australia who had been there many, many, many times. He became my producer. He had some ins and outs with some of the village chiefs. So he was, you know, helping me get to these villages. So I've been back to Papua New Guinea 3 different times, shooting these indigenous tribes.
This is a bit rare. So you're out. So I mean, even though you bring your studio with you, this time this looks like you were actually out in the jungle.
Well, Mark, this again is experimenting. Now, most of my work is done in camera. Okay, most of my work is done in camera. But what I did is I shot this gentleman on a green screen, and I went out into the jungle and found an area that I wanted to photograph and use it as a background. And I came back to Chicago and worked with my in-house retoucher, and we put this together in the studio.
Did you shoot the background purposely then out of focus, or?
Oh, absolutely, Mark. Absolutely.
So you shot them as plates for the.
Yeah, I shot them as plates. Yeah. Yep, all these here that you're seeing with these backgrounds are plates. And again, it's not the way I normally work. I mean, this is a real rarity, but it worked. You know, it was something different that I wanted to experiment with and play with. You know, you got to do something that stands out, that's different than everybody else that's doing portraits. You know, so you're always experimenting and trying to find something new. So I am 90 now. This is a quick project I've been working on off and on. You know, I'm dealing with my own aging process. I'm dealing with my skin wrinkling, my muscles not being as strong as I used to be, and not being, you know, the man I used to be in my 20s, 30s, and 40s. So I'm dealing with aging, and so for me to deal with aging, I have to confront age. And so I love, if we could hold on this image for a minute, you know, to confront it and to deal with it, you have to be in front of it. And so this is a project that you know, I so love these people. I mean, this woman right here, this is, oh, her name is slipping my mind right now. She's a really big Chicago photographer. She just passed away. Does anybody know her name here? Barbara Crane.
Oh, Barbara Crane. Wow.
Barbara Crane, phenomenal photographer.
Yeah.
One of the pioneers, for women. And we're very, very, very good friends. And I asked her if she could shoot, if she would mind, if she would pose nude for me. And she was so generous in giving me, you know, her body, you know, her time, and letting me photograph her. And I don't think, unless she was an artist, I don't think that she understood exactly, you know, because she's an artist, she understood what I was looking for. And to me, this is one of the most powerful photographs I've ever taken.
Yeah, and you could see that in just the way she's looking at the camera, at the way she has her hands.
Yeah, so powerful.
She does have an understanding right there that
Absolutely,
the lens for sure.
absolutely. And this is, you know, another thing that I'm dealing with is you know, is I've seen, you know, I've had family members with Alzheimer's. Not that Barbara had it, but this is the kind of the confusion that I think that they feel when they have Alzheimer's or dementia. And so I wanted to kind of show that in a photograph.
No. And was that done in a single
Image? Yeah. Like I said, 90% of my work, Mark, is done in camera.
Yeah, there really is something unfathomable about age and photography's ability to freeze a moment in time. That's what's really, I think, it attracted me and you as well. Though you do, as we'll see a little bit later, deal in the moving image as well. But there really is an incredible, the concept that you can freeze somebody for eternity with a camera.
This is my aunt. You know, this is my mom's sister. My mom passed away years ago, but this is just like my mother here. And this poor lady, she's an absolute angel. You know, she's 90 years old, and she's beginning to really, really lose it. You know, so I needed to photograph that.
Now this one, I'm going to show you guys this book right here, which is the latest one. It's just out. If you only can have one Sandro book, this one to me is an amazing history lesson as well, and it's your homage to the masters. And you want to talk about how that came about?
Well, again, Mark, this was the same time that the Morocco project came about. These were ideas that I got while I was recovering. I was in like 6 months of recovery from the chemo and the radiation that I had gotten from the stage 4 cancer. And, you know, I really didn't know if I was going to make it or be able to ever shoot again. And I began to think about my career and the influences and the inspirations I got in. You know, I could virtually close my eyes and you know, lying in that bed, and these images would come to my mind, because to me, they're the most iconic, the most powerful portraits ever taken by our master photographers. And so I recreated 61 images by about, I think maybe, I don't know, maybe 48, 49 different photographers. I would recreate them down to the most infinite detail. I mean, this work took years to study before I even started shooting the project, because If you didn't do this project absolutely down to perfection, it could be a really laughing stock, you know? So, of course, you have to take some creative license. And of course, you know, this is John Malkovich in every single image. You know, I didn't have John Ford. I didn't have Truman Capote. I didn't have, Winston Churchill. Yeah, I didn't have Marilyn Monroe. You know, I had a 60-year-old John Malkovich trying to play all these parts, which was probably one of the most brilliant geniuses in the world to work with. You know, a person who really transforms himself to the point that sometimes my crew of 25, 30 people would sit there and watch him transform himself into these characters, and we would just be blown away, completely blown away by that transformation. And then he comes back out of Hemingway back into John Malkovich. I mean, this is an actor that is beyond, the normal actor. You know, he's just incredible.
Now, I do have to ask you this, and I hope I'm not putting you on the spot too much, but okay, so this is Dorothea Lange's Migrant Workers. Now, for those that have seen the original shot, first of all, this is just brilliant to recreate this. I mean, obviously, as you've, when we've done interviews before, you've talked about the incredible crew you have, because it would be impossible to do this without amazing stylists who, you know, vintage clothes that are gathered hair. But your migrant
mother,
the mother here, the eyes are tack sharp, but I think in the original, in the Dorothea Lange shot, she actually back focused accidentally a little bit. Yeah. Could you not bring yourself to purposely go out of focus on that?
Well, you know, I can't say that I couldn't, you know, do that. You know, maybe I didn't really notice as much as I studied these images. I guess I never noticed that it was that Dorothea had actually missed focus on that there.
Yeah.
So I didn't know that. I'm gonna have to throw this out of focus now, Mark. Oh, darn it.
No. Just I just love it. I mean, it reveals in that shot. I never noticed in the original shot that there was a baby in the arms of the woman. I mean, would you? But
Dorothea only took like 7 or 8 photographs, and there's one photograph where she's actually nursing the baby in the proof sheet. You could see where she's actually nursing the baby.
Wow. Yeah. It's so brilliant. And obviously I'm not taking anything away from that incredible image that Dorothea Lange did.
I would love to tell the audience that, you know, this is being shown in museums all over the world. And something very unexpected happened out of this project. First of all, I didn't do this project. I never thought it was going to be this project that it became. I didn't do it for that. I did it because I needed a light at the end of a very dark tunnel to give me something to think about and hope, is why this project was first done. But then as it began to pick up momentum and it was started to be, you know, written up by a lot of different magazines and then shown in a lot of museums and galleries, what has happened with this project has become a learning project where people, you know, so many of our young photographers don't know who Karsh is. They don't know who Korda is, Avedon, Penn, you know, and it just blows my mind that they don't know our masters. So what's happening with this project now is that a lot of these younger photographers, they're, you know, as they're taking these tours, the tour guide is taking them through the museums and having them on their cell phones so that they could take a back look at the original and actually learn more about the original photographer. I mean, this makes me happier than anything that we're introducing some of these masters, and I don't want to say they've been forgotten, but some of them, you know, they just aren't recognized today as they always should be, because they're our masters. You know, like who could forget a Diane Arbus? You know, yeah. But I think it tends, you know, when you come up with new generations, they're onto something new, fresh, contemporary, that they're forgetting really truly about our masters.
That's right. And here with Annie Leibovitz, you know, with you creating the John and Yoko shot, and then the tragedy that happened just after that photo session, people don't know that. And so it is a history lesson. You know, your Arnold Newman recreation of Stravinsky. I mean, just the work that you put into this, and I've seen you. You are tireless. I mean, you seem to pack about 60 hours into every 24-hour day with work.
Well, this project, Mark, as you know, I mean, I didn't want it to be a parody. I didn't want people to laugh at it. I didn't want it to look like a half-assed attempt.
Yeah.
I really wanted to go through the pain. I really wanted to understand where the photographer was at that time, how that photographer got his subject to participate in that particular shot the way that the photographer did. I mean, I really went through the pains, I mean, every single little detail on buttons, watches, rings, glasses. I mean, it had to be perfect. And I had many of the stuff, many of the things that are in these shots made, especially so that they would be as close to perfect as possible.
Right. And you changed up camera formats, films and such in order to emulate the original, or?
In some instances, but the majority of the shots were done digitally because both mine and John's schedules were so busy. I would only get John just a few days a year. I mean, this project took 5 years for us to complete. But when he was there, we had to get off 6 shots a day.
Wow.
So everybody who's listening, that was a personal project. From that personal project, I get a call from New York Magazine from Jody Kwan, who lived right above the gallery in New York, Yancey Richardson Gallery. She lived right above the gallery, came home that night from the magazine to this big packed house at Yancey Richardson Gallery, comes in, sees the work, calls me the next day, says, Sandro, we have to work together. So, she saw that project. That project led into this project, which is a project that was the 2017 spring fashion issue for the New York Magazine. And she wanted to recreate these very iconic images of women in the wardrobe, the fashion of the spring of 2017. So this is all not vintage clothes. I had to find the clothing that would work in the shots and still make it look like a recreation. So this is a particularly very difficult project to do. And I'm going to tell you, this is all shot in one day because Jessica Lange could only give me one day. So I had 2 days to set up in LA before Jessica came in. So I rented a warehouse that I could set up all of these shots. I believe there's 8 of them. I had each of them set up and lit. And then we had to go through makeup and wardrobe changes throughout the day with Jessica. She gave me 16 hours. She's the hardest working woman out there. She gave me so much in one day, and she would not stop until she felt she was absolutely perfect in every image. She'd come over and take a look, and she'd look at the image that I thought was our hero image. And if it was right, we'd move on to the next one. But I remember with the Marlene Dietrich, she said, Sandro, it's not right. And this is the last shot of the day. And we went over and she gave me another hour trying to get that Marlene Dietrich shot down absolutely perfect. Just an amazing, hardworking, generous woman.
Wow.
So now, again, from the Malkovich project, now that's out being shown and it's in museums and magazines everywhere. David Lynch sees the work, and David wants to recreate 8 of his most iconic characters in his for a project that he wanted me to do for him, which was a film called Psychogenetic Fugue and the Still Project. So again, using Malkovich, going back and working for David, getting on the phone with David and just even the thought of creating something for David Lynch is haunting, because you're absolutely, you're working with one of the best directors in the world, and he wants you to recreate these sets, to as identical as possible of his, using John Malkovich as the character. So I mean, it was a lot of pressure. And David turned out to just be an amazing, wonderful guy to work with.
Eraserhead, I find one of the most disturbing films I've ever scene?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mystery
Did
Man.
he give you fairly free license, David Lynch? Or
Well, on the stills, yes, but on the script that I wrote, he made changes for over a month. I think there was 13 different rewrites on the film that I did for him. I wish we had time to show the film, but unfortunately, it's like 17 minutes long. This is, to me, is one of the most, I mean, when David created Elephant Man, this scene right here, I mean, when John was reciting the prayer, I'm trying to think the name of the prayer now. The Lord is my shepherd. Psalm 23, I think it is. Don't quote me on that. But I mean, the crew was crying.
oh.
It was just so, John was so on it, and it was so beautifully recited that, I mean, everybody was in tears.
Where can people see it? Because then we won't show it tonight.
Yeah, I don't, I think you could YouTube it. It's called Psychogenetic Fugue, and it may be on my website, but if anybody really wanted to see it, I mean, all you have to do is just get in touch with me, and I'd be happy to, put a link up for them to see.
Yeah,
So then,
all your films, everybody, and I think this might be the last.
no, this is my newest project. This book will be out in May. This is all about celebrating Black beauty, Black hair, the freedom that Black women now have with being able to wear their hair the way they want to wear their hair in corporations. You know, for so many years, corporations had Black women white down their hair. They wouldn't accept dreads, wouldn't accept a lot of different styles. Even my wife, who is Black, she works for United Airlines, had problems with her hair. And it's just absolutely disgusting to me to know that corporate America would take culture and tell women that they couldn't wear their hair the way that they wanted to wear. This is one of my favorite projects that I've done in my career. I started shooting it 22 years ago. I've been working with transgenders, and I'm going to tell you, this is the most beautiful group of people I've ever worked with. So incredibly sensitive, loving, caring, interesting, smart, and yet living often a very difficult life because of the uneducation of people not being non-accepting. It's just absolutely horrific, the stories that I have been told. But I have to be honest with you, this is one of the most loving, beautiful, gentle groups that I've ever been in contact with. And I continue this project. I'm going to be shooting in Japan, hopefully next year with Mark, then over to Thailand. And then I want to finish it in Brazil before and then I'll start putting the book together and the exhibition will start going out. But this is all, to me, is about educating people, educating the world that these people are real. This is not some crazy fad or illness that people who are ignorant don't understand. And I hope that through this project that maybe we can begin to educate more people about transgenders and non-binary. Non-binary is kind of a new group that really has come out in probably the last, I think probably 18 months, what I've heard about it. And I know it seems it's probably been around much longer, but I think that people have been talking about it maybe the last 18 months. And non-binary is when a male or female aren't accepting any gender, either gender, and they want to be called theys or thems. You know, when you're not sure of what somebody is, you ask that person, what is your pronoun? You know, and then when you ask them what their pronoun is, they'll tell you whether it's trans man, trans woman, non-binary, them, they, or how they would like to be addressed. And that's the polite way of asking when you don't know who you might be talking to, And so it's just, I'm learning so much, and it's just, again, such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful group of people. such a beautiful group.
Yeah, I
of
noticed a couple of photos when we were in China. You stayed a few extra days to continue the project there.
Yeah, yeah.
Have
These
you
are down in,
found?
this is all down in New Orleans here. Just a wonderful, wonderful group of people. I mean, this young trans female just won the Queen for her high school. And that just made me feel so good to know that a high school was so accepting that they awarded her the, what they call it, the homecoming queen.
Yep.
And it's so beautiful. So this is, so see, this is the film. I'm going to leave everybody with something a little weird here. You know, I figure we could use a little weirdness in our life. So this is the film that won me the 2011 Best Director in Cannes. And it's a 2-minute film. And then we'll go into a quick Q&A.
So I hope I can
Go down one more. There you go. Turn the volume up. Why don't you start it over, Mark? Mark?
Yep.
Can you start it over? Because something's right with the sound.
Okay, so we're gonna have to do a little thing here.
Oh, okay.
And we're already a little over, and there hasn't been really any questions in the chat, so at least we're okay there. Okay, Mark, so stop sharing your screen.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing here.
Okay, and hit,
Hold
and
on
then
one
hit,
quick
and then
second.
just hold on 1 second. Don't touch anything.
But I hit stop share.
Yeah, and then go back to share screen, but only click it once and stop.
Okay, so let me. Okay.
Okay,
So-
and so then down at the bottom left-hand side, there should be a button that says like share computer audio, and just check that box. You see it?
Okay. So that's where the problem was. So let me.
And then go back to where you were, and then you can start it over, and then it'll work.
Oops. Okay, let me do one thing real quickly here. Sorry. I have to stop one thing here first. Quit that.
See my friends from Spain.
Okay. All right. So tell me again, Jason, please.
So click on the share screen button once,
One click.
and then it brings up the window where you can pick what you want to share. And then down in the lower left hand, there's a little checkbox that says share computer audio. I think that's what it says.
Okay, so I'm clicking one time. Then it says share sound. You are such a genius.
And then click into, and then we can go back, and then it should work fine.
Okay.
Thank you for hanging in there.
Okay. It's asking for permission here.
Yeah, just go ahead and say yes. And then you can go and hit play.
So, you guys, let me hit this now.
Yep. And then just
I think you have to go to the next
click down into the next,
Right.
and it should be fine.
Okay.
Is it one more?
hit pause. There we go.
Great. And should I stop the share now? Or good. Okay, so that was the last, that was Sandro. And we could see sandrofilm.com. So you guys do that. So I'm going to hand it back over to Jason, right?
Okay, yeah, great. I definitely want to thank both of y'all for being here, and I want to thank everybody, even though we ran a little bit long. Thanks for sticking it out, and we certainly appreciate your extra time today. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, and I do want to. I'm sorry, Jason. I want to say one thing. You guys had some great questions. Would you mind, Sandro, if some people send you questions directly later?
Oh, they could send them to me, and no problem at all. If you want to stay on, I could stay on, but whatever you feel. You know, I'm very easy to get in touch with. You know, you could probably shoot them out my email address. But you know, I understand we went late today, and I'm sorry we went late. I want to thank everybody for hanging in there, and I hope it didn't get, you know, too boring or anything like that. But it was really a privilege and an honor to be able to have such a wonderful group, you know, people who love photography to speak to. So I want to thank you very, very, very much for hanging in there. But please reach out to me with any questions at all.
Fantastic. And Sandro, your work is amazing, and I definitely appreciate you sharing that with everybody. And as I said, if you guys have a chance to take one of Sandro's workshops somewhere or go to his exhibitions or check out the books, I guarantee you it's well worth the investment of time and energy. So thank you so much for doing this. And Jason, back to you.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty much it. Everyone said everything that needs to be said. On behalf of the Los Angeles Center of Photography, I want to thank both of y'all for being here and your time. And again, thanks everybody else for being here. So we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.